holidays, everybody. We're just 48 hours away from Christmas. And with me is Santa Claus himself, Chris King. He's going to be delivering you all kinds of wonderful gifts under the Christmas tree. So, Chris, first of all, happy holidays to you. And as you can see, we are wearing our Christmas sweaters. Mine is red. It's the Tampa Bay Bandits throwback. And Chris, I'll let Chris explain his beautiful.
Yeah, I just got one of my old Maple Leaf jerseys from back when closer to the original '6 era, where the leaf actually looked like that, as opposed to
looks like a leaf.
Yeah, as opposed to the one back there where it just looks like somebody used a cookie cutter.
Right.
I blame that on Harold Ballard too.
With a hand, yeah, exactly. So no, it's wonderful, and this is the time of year when everybody's feeling good and having excitement, and just like late night shopping just before Christmas, there's a lot of late night betting just before Christmas as well, and that's what we're here to do. Consider us your little elves helping you as you work your way through that morass of trying to win when it comes Christmas morning. Makes Christmas morning so much better. So anyway, without any further ado, our special edition of I was going to say 12 things of Christmas, 12 days of Christmas, but we don't have that much time. So we're going to go with the picks for Christmas. And Chris, where do we start today, buddy?
Well, first, Jim, before we do that, let's talk about what a massive day this is in sports history. It was today in 1972 with the Immaculate Reception at Three Rivers Stadium. Everybody remembers that. The big thing, Art McNally was there and said that, when Fred Swearingen came over and asked if they should overrule it, he said, if we change the call, we'll never get out of here alive.
And he was right.
Hence that play stood. Also today, Jim, in 1982, the biggest upset probably in all of college basketball history. We've talked about it before when we talked about the Maui Invitational, when Little Chaminade beat Ralph Sampson in Virginia 77-72 in a game that 3,000 people were in attendance, but probably 300,000 people said they were in the arena by now.
Or watched it, yeah.
But those are just a couple of interesting things to throw out there. Yeah, John, it was a rough day yesterday. Today will be a better one, I think. And we got a couple good bounce back options for you today. But we'll start on the hardwood in Madison, Wisconsin at the Kohl Center, where the Badgers are going to host George Mason tonight. Wisconsin 9-2 on the year. George Mason is 7-5. Now, George Mason's coming off a 67-44 win over American Tuesday night. Wisconsin hasn't played since they beat Nicholls State last Wednesday in a game that was probably a lot closer than most people anticipated, which was surprising. Wisconsin 69th in offensive efficiency this season. They're 25th in defensive efficiency. They're 82nd in effective field goal percentage. Defense at 46.8%. They hold opponents to 45.9% shooting from inside the arc, and they're 90th in block percentage at 11.2%. George Mason, they're 2-1 on the road, but they're facing a Wisconsin team that's 5-1 at home. That lone loss coming to Ohio State 2 Saturdays ago. George Mason just 15-36-1 against the spread in their last 52 against teams with a winning percentage above 600. They're 1-4 after giving up less than 50 points. Meanwhile, Wisconsin 5-1 in their last 6 after a straight-up win, 5-1 in their last 6 as a favorite, and 6-2 in their last 8 overall. Granted, I get George Mason's played some decent basketball of late, but they haven't played a team like Wisconsin that'll grind you down to nothing and who likes to run a slow, methodical game, which has been the system under Bo Ryan and now Greg Gard. Brad Davison and Johnny Davis are probably too much for the Patriots to handle. Look for the Badgers to pick up the win at home in this one to snap that win streak for George Mason.
And a short one it was. But they, American University, God love them, haven't had a good team. Well, Jeff Scott was there for a while, and prior to that, actually, Gary Williams back in the day. So it's been
right. And in between there is, I can't remember, it's Ed something. I can't remember what his last name was.
I don't know. I used to live probably 4 blocks from American University in Washington, and used to wander up there occasionally just to watch a game. You'd see John Feinstein, for some reason, have an affection for the American University, but they're good in the Patriot League. It's not a bad.
He always liked going to Fort Myer.
Yeah, well, who wouldn't?
Ed Tapscott, that's who it was.
Oh, Tapscott. Okay, there you go. Yeah, they've had a lot of interesting coaches on stop along the way.
Yeah, Jeff Jones spent a long time there.
Yeah, he did, and he had some decent teams. But no, Wisconsin, they're a blue blood in the Big Ten in basketball for a reason, and you're right. I don't see how they're gonna lose to George Mason. And the other thing is George Mason is not a deep team either. So
that's true too. Yeah, that's a valid point.
That becomes a problem whenever you're playing against a bunch of big bodies like Wisconsin has. So, all right, we had fun in the cheese state. So let's move on. For those of you who want cheese under your tree, please put it in the comment section out there. We'll see what we can do to Santa Claus. Here we go.
Right, now we've got a Big East matchup. Real quick, John, Liberty and Stanford going under the total is kind of a tough call because Liberty is a very good offensive team. I was going to talk about them a little later on. They hit 15 threes last night against Northern Iowa. Stanford managed to claw out a win over Wyoming, but, it's going to be a challenge to see the Cardinal play good defense again. They're not a great perimeter team. I don't know if I would touch that one just because it's such a low total. It's at 127 right now. I mean, even in yesterday's game, Stanford put up 129. Liberty had a total of 150 in their game. It's kind of a tough one to lean one way or the other. But here we're talking about the Big East, and Butler going to head over to the Lou Carnesecca Arena in Queens. Jim, I'm sure you're familiar with old Lou.
I am. Yeah. Speaking of sweaters,
to take on St. John's. The Red Storm 8-3 on the year, but they're coming off an ugly win against Pitt, or an ugly loss to Pitt at the buzzer. Butler 7-4. St. John's will be without Julian Champagne, Joel Soriano, and Tariq Coburn, leaving them with just 8 scholarship players. They could burn a red shirt on one of their other guys to get a 9th. The Bulldogs are without Bryson Z and Bo Hodges. Chuck Harris missed the game against Purdue over the weekend. He's questionable here. You know what St. John's likes to do under Mike Anderson? They will press, and run you into the ground for 40 minutes. It reminds me of the Nolan Richardson 40 minutes of hell in Arkansas. I'm sure you remember those days, Jim, as well.
I do, yeah. Fun to watch.
Yeah, and that's a big thing here. St. John's 34th in effective field goal percentage at 54.6%. They're 90th in three-point shooting. They shoot 55.6% from inside the arc, which is 29th in the country. This is going to be a big clash of styles. St. John's likes to run. They're 14th in the nation in tempo, 73.4 possessions a game. Butler does not. Butler is 351st in tempo. They average only 62.6 possessions a game. Butler wants to lull you to sleep, while St. John's wants to run you into the ground. Butler just 253rd in effective field goal percentage. They're 306th in turnover percentage at 22%. They're 265th shooting inside the arc. They're 2-7 in their last 9 on the road against teams with a winning home record. 1-5 in their last 6 against teams with a winning percentage above 600. The home team has gone 13-3 against the spread in the last 16 meetings. Even without Coburn and Champagne and stuff, you have to think St. John's has enough in the tank to run a poor shooting Butler team out of the Carnesecca Arena. I feel bad for Butler. They've won some games, but they don't score very many points, and you're not a very effective offensive team. And when you're turning the ball over better than 1 out of every 5 possessions playing at such a slow tempo, you're not giving yourself very much of a margin of error there. And against a team like St. John's that will force you to turn the ball over, the Red Storm 24th in the nation defensively by forcing turnovers on 23.6% of possessions. You have to think that the Red Storm can find a way to take down the Bulldogs in this one and get the win at home.
Yeah, you brought up a good point in the listings there about tempo and running. Normally, if you find a team that is a good pressing team, they're good athletic, and that same kind of, they can turn offense into defense and defense into offense pretty quickly. And I think that's what we're seeing this year with the St. John's team. It's a team that can turn you over, heartbeat, and you're 6 points down before you ever found out what just happened. And,
right. I mean, if you look at the teams with the fast tempos, you've got the top 5 are Charleston, which is strange, Marshall, Charleston, Southern, Arizona, and then for some reason Mississippi Valley State likes to run, but they can't do anything on defense. So
if you can't do defense, you better run.
It's interesting that two out of the top 6 teams in tempo are out of the SWAC. Mississippi Valley State, and then Prairie View A&M, who we talked about yesterday, and then Alabama State is 11th.
Well, that's not unusual for the SWAC because, again, if you're a SWAC fan, if you watch SWAC games, you know that you see some of the most athletic and fun basketball games watching SWAC games because they're literally, it's like watching an all-star game, or kind of like watching guys play on this, in the schoolyard type, after school type things where these guys just love to play offense. They don't care about defense, but they love to play offense. So it's fun to watch.
Which is evident because if you look at Mississippi Valley State, not only are they 0-10 for Lindsey Hunter, they've given up at least 90 points in 6 of their 10 games. And they've given up at least 80 and 7, and they haven't given up less than 72 in any game.
He used to score average of 27 points as a forward for the Mississippi Valley State team.
Are you going to tell me Jerry Rice?
I was going to tell you Jerry Rice. That's right.
I figured that he's the only big name I remember out of Mississippi Valley State besides Willie Totten.
Yeah, Willie Totten too. But he played both basketball and football at Mississippi Valley State. He had good hops. He was a forward. Small forward, but a forward nonetheless. And I don't think anybody had ever questioned that he had the ability to run up and down a court.
That's true.
So it's fun. SWAC games are fun to watch. If you have a chance to check it out, at least for 15, 20 minutes, you'll probably see 100 points in 15 or 20 minutes. So all right, so we've gone there. Now we're leaving the island, and where are we headed?
We're going to head back to the Beehive State, where Weber State's at home. They're a 1-point favorite over Fresno State. Both teams coming in 9-3 on the year, so it's a pretty good matchup of mid-majors from the Big. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean the Mountain West, and then Weber State from the Big Sky. Weber State, they're 4-2 at home. They have lost their last 2 at home, but they were to 2 pretty good teams in BYU and Utah State. Nobody's going to tell you that those teams are pushovers. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, Fresno State's 0-3 on the road this season. Weber State 79th in effective field goal percentage. They're 46th in 2-point shooting. They don't turn the ball over a lot, and they get to the free throw line often. They're 51st in the nation by getting .358 free throw attempts per field goal. Meanwhile, Fresno State 203rd in effective field goal percentage. They're 310th in 3-point shooting, and they're 203rd in field goal percentage at 43.9%. Fresno State relies on their defense. They're kind of like the South Florida of the West. Speaking of which, if you didn't watch that game yesterday, good for you because that game was terrible. Final score, BYU 54, South Florida 39. South Florida scored 6 points in the final 11-plus minutes in a game that, set basketball back 50 years.
It pains me. Go ahead.
Fresno State 9-23-1 against the spread in their last 33 against teams with a winning record. They're 3-7 in their last 10 on the road against teams with a home winning percentage greater than 600. Weber State 5-1 in their last 6 after a straight-up loss, and they're 8-3 in their last 11 on Thursday. I get Fresno State's played good basketball, but if you look, they're not winning on the road. Their 3 road losses this season came by 8 at Cal, by 8 at San Francisco, and by 5 at Utah. Now, Weber State, you might not class them as better than Utah, but I think and San Francisco's played very good basketball. But, Cal has been at the bottom of the Pac-12 for an eternity.
Right.
And you went and lost by 8 against them. If you look at Fresno State's wins, their best victory came over UC Irvine by 8 at home. Other than that, they beat Fresno Pacific. Nobody's ever heard of them. Long Island University, Idaho, who's rated 339th in the Ken Pom rankings, Pepperdine, well, they did beat Santa Clara on a neutral floor, so that might actually be their best win. San Diego, Cal State Northridge, and Cal Poly. Those aren't exactly the murderer's row of basketball teams in college hoops today.
Yeah. Cal Poly, by the way, for those who are unfamiliar, is the school that the Big Bang Theory was supposed to, they were supposed to be Cal Poly or Cal Tech, as it's known in Pasadena. So that's where they were. But I have a quick question for you. Chris, do you think that oftentimes people overlook the Big Sky because they play some pretty decent basketball out in the Big Sky?
I think it gets overlooked a lot because nobody ever thinks about, like I said, they don't think about Weber State. You don't think about Montana. Mm-hmm. People don't think about Eastern Washington. Mm-hmm. A lot of these teams, we saw what Eastern Washington did in the tournament last year. They gave Kansas all they wanted. Montana's won games in the tournament. Weber State's a good team. Obviously, like you talked about when we talked about them last week. Damian Lillard played there. They're obviously not a bad school. I think the problem is that, it's a bunch of smaller schools in a conference in the part of the country where it's not densely populated. And
more cows than more people. Yeah.
Right. And so people always think about, well, who cares about them? We don't know who they are. And I think they get snubbed sometimes at tournament time because you've had some good teams that didn't win the conference tournament come out of the Big Sky that obviously got snubbed and then ended up in the NIT or the CBI or the CIT or the
MOUSC.
Yeah. The XYZ tournament, whatever. Right. And, it's too bad.
It is. But I just remember that Weber State always, in the early days of the ABA and to some extent the early 70s, the NBA, there were always one or two kids that from Weber State would end up playing in professional basketball. All right. So as we wax on, we move on. And we are
now we can go to the hardwood of the association because, again, there's no hockey today. Thanks, Gary Bittman.
Hockey's on ice, so we're going to the association. And
look at that. We got the Phoenix Suns. There's actually a team in the state of Arizona that's winning games. Can't say that about the Cardinals lately, and we've already beaten the Coyotes into the ground.
And the Diamondbacks aren't playing. So
right. That too. The Suns, I know it's a big number. They're favored by 15 over Oklahoma City, but we're talking about a Phoenix team that has won 4 in a row and 24 of their last 26. They pasted the Lakers 108-90 on the road Tuesday night. Now, I know the Thunder have won 3 in a row. Okay, that's great. When's the last time they did that? Nobody remembers. That's how long it's been.
I don't.
They're playing the second game of a back-to-back. They beat Denver yesterday in a game that disappointed me because the Nuggets didn't show up. Oklahoma City, they're 1-3 in the second game of back-to-backs this season. In those games, they're being outscored by an average of 21 points a game. They're only scoring 99.3 points a game in those situations. They're giving up 120. Not a good stat to look at. If you look, Oklahoma City, they're 5-9 on the road. They're being outscored by 11.8 points a game in those situations. They're facing a Phoenix team that is 14-2 at home. They outscore their opponents by 10.7 points a game at the Suns' home floor there. I can't remember what they call it because it's changed names so many times that I can't even keep track. The Thunder 1-5 in their last 6 on Thursday. The Suns 4-0 in their last 4 overall. They're 4-0 in their last 4 against teams with a losing straight-up record. They're 20-8 in their last 28 at home against teams with a losing record. The Suns have Devin Booker back now. The Thunder are tired. Like we just said, they get smashed in the second game of back-to-backs. There's no reason to consider the Thunder here. You could probably get 25 or 20 points, and I still wouldn't touch the Thunder. They're a weak team. They don't have a ton in their rotation besides Gilgeous-Alexander and Lou Dort, maybe Josh Giddey if he feels like shooting. The Suns are too dangerous. They're too deep. They're too talented. And most importantly, they're proving last year wasn't a fluke.
Right. Earlier in the week, Chris, and last week as well, we pretty much said without question that probably the two best teams in basketball at this point in time are Phoenix and Golden State.
Right.
And they haven't proved us wrong yet. They've been both of them have played well, and Phoenix playing at home against KC. You're right. From the number 1 player on the team down to the number 14 player on the team, they got depth, they got quality. KC doesn't.
Yeah, I mean, if you look, when Booker was out, Cameron Johnson stepped up and put up some pretty good numbers, filling in for him. Now that Booker's back, Johnson can still put up those numbers, but now it's just complementary instead of replacing something that was missing. The Thunder, they don't have
Makes
that.
It a whole lot
better. Right.
No, they don't. They there's a lot of things Oklahoma City has. It is not depth in that regard. They got nice uniforms sometimes, but Phoenix in the Valley of the Sun. Yeah, Phoenix in the Valley of the Sun is always tough, and no reason why it's not going to stay tough. We go from the Valley of the Sun to
the City of Angels. The Spurs are on the road. They're going to face the Lakers tonight. San Antonio closes a 4-game road trip. They beat Utah. Then they inexplicably lost to Sacramento. But then they came back and pasted the Clippers on Monday night, 116-92. So they've been off for the last 2 days with nothing to do but watch the Lakers lose that game Tuesday to the Suns. The Lakers will not have Frank Vogel. They don't have Anthony Davis. They don't have Malik Monk, Avery Bradley, Kent Bazemore, Kendrick Nunn. Also not playing Kurt Rambis or AC Green. LeBron is questionable with an ankle injury sustained Tuesday night. I mean, let's face it, David Fizdale is the interim coach for the Lakers right now. You can't have a ton of faith in a Los Angeles team that looked lost when they had all 3 of their big 3 with Davis, James, and Westbrook. Now Davis is out for about a month with that MCL sprain. James is questionable. Westbrook has been pressing, and he hasn't looked good anyway. And there's not a ton of depth when it comes to scoring options behind those guys to begin with, because when you spend all your money on 3 guys, you're trying to scrape up guys to throw in the mix. I guess they've got Isaiah Thomas from the G League. But the Spurs 5-0 in their last 5 as a road underdog. They're 5-0 in their last 5 against teams with a winning home record. And they're 5-1 in their last 6 on the road. Meanwhile, the Lakers 3-13 in their last 16 at home against teams with a losing road record. They're 1-6 against the spread in their last 7 on Thursday. And they're 6-15 in their last 21 as a favorite at home. You got to take San Antonio here. I mean, the Spurs have, as weird as it is, and we talked about this before with the way things have worked for Greg Popovich this season, but they have 7 guys averaging in double figures. Meanwhile, the Lakers have 3 guys that might actually get to shoot the ball. And one of them's hurt and won't play. One of them might not play. And then, you might be able to, basically turn in the rest of their teams like the Orlando Magic on a normal night.
Yeah, the Lakers are, unfortunately for them, probably the 3rd best team in the building. So in their building, behind the Kings and the Clippers, they're 16-16, 500 team. They're languishing about. I have very low expectations for the Lakers this year. They just don't look like this is not. A Lakers team that anybody should be excited about or fear at that point.
I mean, the biggest problem is, that they spent all their money to get Davis and Westbrook and James, and then they didn't have any money to sign anybody else. I mean, they lost Schroeder. They lost they traded away other guys like, they traded Kuzma and stuff, and it's made their team. It's made their rotation very thin when you get right down to it as far as talented players. Do you want Rajon Rondo shooting a jumper in crunch time? I don't.
No.
Taylor Tucker's been good when he's on the court, but that's about it.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about your theory on this. It seems like when you try to sign the superstars, right, in the case of bringing in a LeBron James and he then tries to recruit a couple of other guys to make that work. Most of the time, it fails because of the point that you just made, and that is the surrounding cast. If you only have a certain amount of budget, you're playing with a lot of guys on that team who are making league minimum because you can't
Right.
afford to go any deeper than that. And maybe
Right. And
sometimes
you
you
wonder
might.
why, all these other teams have more depth. I mean, if you look at a team, and we'll use the Suns as an example, they've got Devin Booker and CP3, but you've still got DeAndre Ayton, and you've got, like we said, we got Cam Johnson. You got all these other guys that can step up and provide complementary depth. The Lakers have, well, we said Rondo, and let's just take a quick look. They'd have Bazemore if he wasn't in the protocols.
Right.
They'd have Bradley if he wasn't in the protocols. But, you're talking about guys that, their best days are behind them. Dwight Howard. When's the last time anybody saw Dwight Howard do anything?
I thought he was retired.
Or, Wayne Ellington. He's a good perimeter shooter when he's healthy, but that's the same issue again. Trevor Ariza, they've got him on the roster. He's barely played this year, and he's 36.
Right.
All these guys are guys that they're limited at best. Ariza's played 2 games. He just came back. So, what do you expect to get out of these guys? When you shop in the bargain bin, that's the risk you're going to take.
Right. You end up with 5 guys named Mo. You have no idea who's going to be.
It reminds me of when you play NBA 2K. I play it with my son on the Xbox, and when you play some of the older teams, they don't have all the players because the rotations weren't as deep back then. So you've got like Pete Maravich and Lou Hudson and all those guys on the Hawks, and then all the other guys are John Brown,
right?
And they're all rated 65, and they're all terrible,
right?
And that's basically what the Lakers have. They have a bunch of guys named John Brown that all look the same. They all wear ridiculous jersey numbers,
right?
And there you go.
It is symptomatic. The rare exception, of course, the Miami thing when LeBron and Dwayne and Bosch went there. That was a unicorn situation. They actually had some players on that team that could do it. KD, when he went to Golden State, that was more of a one guy super team because the super team was there. They just added a one guy. So I'm not sure you could count that, but it pretty much everywhere LeBron has gone, and I'm not just picking LeBron out in this case, but pretty much everywhere LeBron has gone, they've been competitive for a year or two, and then either he better move on or they're not competitive anymore.
Right, because you get these guys chewing up so much of the cap. Just look at the numbers. James is making $41 million. Davis is making $35 million. Westbrook is making $44.2 with the trade kicker that kicked in. You're talking about you already went over the cap basically with those 3 guys. So you have no choice but to throw out all this, cheap money at people and hope that they stick around. And if you look,
you also have with LeBron. Okay.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just going to say with LeBron, and I'm not breaking any news here. LeBron is a coach killer. He always finds a reason to get angry and upset with the coach. There was a great situation in Miami where he went to then general manager, Pat Riley, and went to Pat and said, you got to fire Eric Spoelstra. And Pat goes, "Are you coaching this team?" And he goes, "No." He says, "But I think you would do a better job because I'm the general manager. Eric's the coach. You're the player. Go play." So he wasn't going to be bullied by LeBron. He had coaches fired in Cleveland. He's gotten coaches fired in Los Angeles.
Yeah, David Bryant was a prime example of that.
Oh my!
With Cleveland.
Yeah. It was strange. That was very, very strange. But look, the Lakers are not they're not the late show that we used to enjoy watching. They are, the jerseys are basically the only thing that are left of the dynasty that we know as the Lakers. It's kind of, in some regards, the same way that the Boston Celtics are, only for different reasons. But anyway,
that's true.
I don't want to get too field. Back to the hardwood we go, and back to the association we go.
Yep, and we got the Pacers over the Rockets tonight. That game coming from the Gainbridge Fieldhouse because, God forbid, somebody keeps the same name on an arena for a couple of years. The Pacers
For
10-7
weeks.
at home. The Rockets are 3-6,000 on the road.
Yeah, they're
Give or
not
take.
good.
I mean, they're not good on the road. Let's be honest. They're 3-14.
Mm-hmm.
They've lost 2 in a row. And 4 of their last 5 after that impressive 7 or 8 game win streak they had. They were drubbed 126-106 on the road by Milwaukee last night in a game where the Bucks did not have Giannis Antetokounmpo. The Rockets, just like the Thunder, they struggle in the second game of back-to-backs. They're 0-4 in those situations. They've been outscored by 16.8 points per game in those games, giving up 121 points plus per contest. They won't have Kevin Porter and Jalen Green again. Malcolm Brogdon, questionable for the Pacers with an Achilles injury, but it probably won't matter. You still have Karis LeVert, Domantas Sabonis, and a whole bunch of other guys that can step up. Miles Turner, if he's motivated enough. The Rockets 18-38 in their last 56 against teams with a losing straight-up record, 1-5 in their last 6 on Thursday. Pacers 3-1-1 in their last 5 at home. And in the last 14 meetings between these teams in Indiana, the Pacers have gone 10-4. I like them to take advantage of a tired Houston team that, they had their blip on the radar where they won seven in a row. They've come back to earth since. Look for the Pacers to prevail at home to go into the break with a little bit of momentum. And the Rockets, they're another team. They're paying John
Hey, have
Wall
you been
to not
surprised
play.
with? Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's a big chunk of money.
Have you been surprised with the action of Kevin Porter Jr.? Yeah,
he's played some good basketball. I mean, his problem is that he seems to be made out of glass. Where he'll play a few games, then he gets hurt,
right.
and then he misses an extended period, and then he comes back and he plays good for a few games. And everybody's like, yeah, hey, Kevin Porter Jr. is great. And then he gets hurt, and then he doesn't play for 2 weeks. I mean, he's played 19 games out of 32 already this season, so he's missed 13. They hope he'll be back Monday against Charlotte.
Right.
I mean, if you look, you can't. It's tough to have faith in a guy that can't stay healthy. I mean, he only played 26 games last year, and he only played 50 as a rookie with Cleveland 2 years ago. So, I mean, you're talking about he's missed a huge chunk of games in his career. He's kind of like Sam Bowie.
Oh,
and that's a name nobody wants to hear.
Sam Bowie was the man who was drafted ahead of Michael Jordan.
Yeah, and David, you make a good point. James is a look at me guy. He's a me-centric guy. When they win, it's him, and when they lose, it's somebody else's fault.
It's not him.
And Jim, you can answer this now that you've seen what's going on in Tampa Bay. A lot of people say Tom Brady is the same. When the Buccaneers win games, it's because of Tom Brady. When they lose, it's because somebody got hurt or something else happened. Do you see that being the case down there in South Florida?
Not really. If you watch Tom's press conferences afterwards, he does own a lot of stuff. He takes on a lot of stuff. He basically says, I had a bad day or so and so. It's not one of those things where he blames the other side just because. I mean, blames other players on the team or throws people under the bus. He pretty much owns it whenever it's been a problem. Now, that being said, when he was in New England earlier in his career, that was, I think, as you get older and as you play more in a league, you realize that the more you play that routine, the less that helps you in the locker room. So I think maybe if you went back 5 or 10 years, you could have found that with Brady. But I think over a period of time, he realized, wait a minute, these guys I'm throwing under the bus are in that. I got to go back to in just a few minutes. So let me be careful what I say. So maybe a few years ago, back and look at some tape on Tom and times when Tom blamed somebody. And more often than not, it was when he on his WEI radio show at that point, but not when since he's been nothing but a sweetie since he's been with the years. And maybe that's just decided he wants, as he gracefully edges out of the league, to be remembered as a team player. He may not have been, 5 or 6 years ago.
Well, as Charles Barkley used to say,
plus he's not on the radio.
Yeah, as Barkley used to say, there's no I in team, but there's an M and an E, and that That seems to fit LeBron
That's
James,
right.
no matter where he's been.
Chuck. Yeah, Chuck would know. There's no about that.
And he would
So,
just tell you it's just terrible, and then
yeah,
send you to
yeah.
Subway.
Oh, just terrible. By the way, just if you got a chance, folks, not now, but later in a second, since you're here at YouTube, type in Danny Rouillet impersonation of Charles Barkley. He does the best. I say that because that's what Chuck says. Chuck says he does. He literally had him on the phone. He worked. He's in Washington. He does an afternoon show, and his name is Danny Rouillet. And just put, even if you misspell it, don't worry about it. Just put Danny Rouillet, and imitates Charles Barkley. It's hilarious, and I think you'll get a big kick out of it. So there you go. Little Danny Rouillet does Charles Barkley. So there you go. All right. So we have been through 3 association games. Are there any more? Or are we headed to the bowls?
We're going to go to the bowl games. 2 of them today.
All right.
Offensive barn burners.
Up first. Here we go.
We got the Frisco Football Classic, a bowl game that didn't exist a few weeks ago. They came up with it on the fly, I guess. And Miami of Ohio from the MAC, they're favored by 2.5 over the North Texas Mean Green from Conference USA. Both teams finished the year 6-6. North Texas won their last 5, while Miami of Ohio won 4 of their last 6. Their 2 losses came by 2 points and 1 point, with the second loss coming to Kent State in overtime. That knocked Miami of Ohio out of the MAC title game and sent Kent State in instead. The Mean Green, 78th in the nation in scoring defense. Miami of Ohio, 45th in that category, only giving up 23.8 points per game. The Red Hawks have veteran quarterback in Brett Gabbert. Yes, that's right. It's Blaine's brother. For those of you who remember what a great career he had with Jacksonville, and now he's the backup in Tampa Bay. They also have a dynamic receiving duo with Jack Sorensen and Mac Hippenhammer. So they can move the ball there quite a bit. North Texas 2-9.
That's one of my favorite names.
Oh, Mac Hippenhammer?
Yeah.
Not to be confused with Armin Hammer.
No. How'd you like to be the equipment manager who had to stitch that on?
Well, that's why they get paid the big bucks.
Right.
But North Texas 2-9 in their last 11 after scoring more than 40 points in their last game. Remember, they closed the season with that 52-21 demolition of a UTSA team that was previously unbeaten going into that game to get bowl eligible. Meanwhile, they're 1-5 in their last 6 after giving up more than 200 yards on the ground, and they're 0-6 in their last 6 in December. Miami of Ohio's 5-0 in their last 5 after allowing more than 40 points. They lost that game, like I said, to Kent State, 48-47 in overtime in the defense optional conference of the MAC. Miami of Ohio 5-0 in their last 5 after allowing more than 200 yards on the ground, and they're 5-0 in their last 5 neutral site games. Some potential for fireworks here, but I mean both teams are also fairly decent defensively. Look for the Red Hawks to find a way to beat the Mean Green, even in the shadows of North Texas being in their backyard, so to speak.
Yeah,
I like
they're
Miami
from
of
the
Ohio.
Dallas area, so beautiful Denton, Texas. It's 2 teams. Usually, when a MAC team comes up against a Conference USA team, the MAC team wins. They're much more physical in that conference than the Conference USA guys are.
And that's been a problem with Conference USA when it comes to bowl games. We saw it the other day with Old Dominion. Everybody thought that Old Dominion was going to roll Tulsa because they had won 5 in a row coming in, and everybody was excited when they ran back the opening kickoff, and then they got waxed from then on.
Right. So, it's nice to look good and go out there and play, but sometimes you just actually have to do it. And I, no shade on North Texas. In Denton, I have relatives who attended that university, so I'm sure they'll be rooting for them this afternoon. It won't help, but they can certainly do all they want to in a way of rooting. All right. Now this one coming up, the Gasparilla Bowl. Now, It sold out after 3 days out there with University of Florida and Central Florida. Now, we're going to get to the board here in a second, but Jack, who will be us next week, is Florida. If there was a way that Florida this game, they probably wouldn't. They got a new coach in Billy Napier coming on board. Half these kids don't know if they're going to be on the team next year or not. And then UCF had a really lousy season from a standpoint of they thought they had great expectations were going to challenge Cincinnati, and that never happened. Actually, even lost to Navy on the road. So Gus Malzone and pick your coordinator from the Gators are playing tonight in Tampa, but it's prime time and it should be an interesting game. Oops, we haven't passed the Frisco Bowl yet. So
no, I moved. Yeah, I actually like UCF in this game +7.
Yeah,
the Knights were 8-4. The Gators 6-6. Like you said, the Gators are playing under interim coach Greg Knox. Because, like you said, Billy Napier will take over after the season. Emory Jones and Jacob Copeland will play for Florida, but they're going to transfer right after the game. How you get to pull that off, I'd like to know, because once you put yourself in the transfer portal, you should be, out, period. But I guess that's just the NCAA.
I can help you on that one. Let me help you real quick on that one. You have to fill out paperwork for it to go to the portal. What they didn't do is they haven't submitted it. So they told the university that they were filing the paperwork after the game. So technically they have written the paperwork. They just have not yet submitted it to the transfer portal.
That just sounds like your typical end around to get around things like that. Anthony Richardson will not play. He had knee surgery. Florida's defense obviously is, let's be honest, not good. I mean, they fired Todd Grantham earlier this season. You have 31 points or more 5 times, including that 52-point bonanza that they got lit up by Samford. That's right. Not Fred Sanford, not Sanford and Son. We're not talking about Red Fox. We're talking about the FCS school, Sanford. We talked about them the other day
in Alabama.
Football, but, in football, they're an FCS school. When you get 52 points in an FCS program, you have problems on the defensive side of the ball. Jim, you can try to tell us more about, how bad that was.
It was not good. Not by any stretch of imagination. By the way, one of the great things about Chris's charts here, if you look at those last, was it 4 or 5, actually 5 categories, when you got offers in all those 5 categories, you're not going to instill a great deal of confidence in anyone who wants to bet on the team.
Yeah, and I mean that's the case here. I mean, UCF, they've won 5 of their last 6. Mikey Keene has gotten better as the season's worn on.
Yeah,
taking over for Dylan Gabriel, who broke his collarbone back in September. The Knights 4-1 in their last 5 on Thursday. They're 35-15-1 in their last 51 after picking up less than 170 yards through the air. But that's because they ran all over South Florida in the war for I-4. Florida 0-6. Yeah. Florida 0-6 in their last 6 non-conference games. 0-6 against the spread in their last 6 overall. 0-5 in their last 5 after an ATS loss. 0-5 in their last 5 as a favorite. And 0-5 in their last 5 on grass. Now, I get Emory Jones is going to play. That's great for Florida. Good luck. You won't see him next season. You'll see him playing somewhere else. The bottom line is the Gators, like Jim said, they're disinterested. They don't really want to be here. Half these guys won't be here next year. The coaches won't be here next year because I'm sure Napier's going to bring in his own staff. And, the Knights, Malzahn wants, if he can stick it to Florida after coaching at Auburn, he's going to do everything he can to do that. I like the Knights plus the 7 in this one.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's not going to be fun for Florida. They have no interest in this game. The only thing that will be the same next season with this group is the jerseys. So beyond that, who's in those jerseys, who knows? But you got both. When you got some heavy-duty transfers going out of it, you got to believe they got one foot in the door and the other foot in the car. So it'll be a nice night for Gator fans in Tampa. Some UCF fans will come over, but it's about the same distance. It's about 100 miles north to Gainesville and about 90 miles to the east to Central Florida. So it's easy for both sides to come and to travel in. So we'll see.
I feel bad for our friend Jack, who had to slog through this.
Jack will tell some more stories next week about what happened at the game. But it's, look, I do think the Knights, whether they win or they don't win, are they favorites? I'm sorry.
No, they're a 7-point underdog.
I don't get that, but all right, fine. We'll see.
I guess it's the bias because Florida plays in the SEC and they played tough against Alabama back in, what was that, October?
Well, they haven't played well since the Alabama. So I don't know. It's been a long time since they played well. They played some sloppy and still won, but I don't know. This is
well, you know what the saying goes, better lucky than good, and that really sums up the way Florida's played for stretches this season. I mean, like we said, giving up 52 to Samford doesn't really, inspire confidence. Before that, they got waxed 40-17 by a South Carolina team that was 6-6, and everybody was. I can tell you, everybody in Columbia was excited about the game going 6-6.
When they lost that game to LSU, which was Ed Orgeron's last game.
Right. Yep. They lost that. They also lost to Missouri in overtime, 24-23. And, nobody's going to fault them for getting waxed by Georgia in the world's largest outdoor cocktail party. Right. Nobody's going to fault them for that. But, they lost at Kentucky. They lost at LSU. They lost at South Carolina. They lost at Missouri. They don't play well in games that aren't in Gainesville because if you look, their only win that came outside of Gainesville this season, and Jim, I know you're going to hate this, they beat South Florida 42-20 back on September 11th.
Well, everybody else did, so you might as well just put that
Since then, they lost to Kentucky, they lost at LSU, they lost in Jacksonville to Georgia, they lost in Columbia, they lost to Missouri. All those games on the road. Or, like we said, the Georgia game was a neutral site. But still, they haven't won outside of Gainesville in more than 3 months.
Well, even the win in Tampa, right, against South Florida, there were more Florida fans there than there were South Florida fans. So, it was a home game for them. And it will. Now,
is it true if you leave the South Florida fan base that there'll only be one guy left?
No, there's some diehards out there. Better times are coming. Give Jeff a couple of, give him a chance. He'll put together a decent team there. It will be, hopefully next year. He's very good at working the transfer portal. Dylan Gabriel, who broke his collarbone, you're talking about from UCF. I guess Mikey's playing well enough that that Dylan Gabriel hit the transfer portal. And from what I understand, Chip Kelly's talking to him about playing at UCLA. They haven't offered him, and he hasn't made any. Yeah. They could. They could. Something to go from UCF to UCLA. That's a step up. But, Mikey seems to have established as Gus's guy in there. Although I've heard rumors that Bo Nix, who left Auburn, who was recruited by Gus, might end up in Orlando. But we'll see. Tonight, 7:00. ESPN.
I thought Bo Nix said he was going to go to. I thought Bo Nix said he was going to go to Oregon.
He's talked to them. I don't know. Was that before or after Mario Cristobal left?
No, that was earlier this week. He said he announced Sunday he's transferring to Oregon.
Okay.
So he's going to go back there and Kenny Dillingham. Because Kenny Dillingham was his offensive coordinator his freshman year, and then he spent the last 2 years at Florida State and then went to Oregon. And Jim, let me ask you this: what do you think about Texas A&M pulling out of the Gator Bowl next week?
I think it's strange because Jimbo loves to go to bowl games. But I think it had to do with COVID related issues, didn't it?
Well, that and people opting out. They said they had 38 scholarship players left.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, they were.
But
Yeah.
now apparently they're saying that Rutgers is going to be the front runner to face Wake Forest. Do you really want to see a 5-7 Rutgers team facing Wake Forest?
No,
in the Gator Bowl here.
I don't. I'm going to say something probably upset people. I don't care. 6-6 is not. That's like game participation trophy. Okay, you're going to a bowl game because you won 6 games, but you also lost 6 games. So I don't understand. I mean, I understand that they need programming, and that's why they're doing this. But it just no. If you don't have a winning record, you should go, and you darn sure shouldn't go if you got a losing record. And you said Rutgers going to Jacksonville to play against?
No, Rutgers is supposed to get the first opportunity to replace Texas A&M and face Wake Forest in the Gator Bowl.
Well, if that's the case, then to coin Scott and Scott, bet the farm on Wake Forest because Rutgers ain't gonna stay with them.
Yeah, I mean, I know other teams Illinois was trying to petition to get in, and Marshall said that they would play even though they already played the bowl game and lost.
So they played 2. I don't know.
Just to point out some stats about Rutgers, Greg Schiano's team finished 113th in the nation in scoring offense at 20.5 points per game. They were decent defensively. They only gave up 24.6 points a game. But, they don't have a good offense, and that would tend to portray a long day against a Wake Forest team that Dave Clawson has done great work with. Granted, the Demon Deacons lost in the ACC title game, but they averaged 41.2 points a game. I don't know if
Rutgers, they can hang points up here.
Yeah, I don't know if Rutgers can slow them down enough. If you look, I mean, that 21 points that Wake scored in the ACC title game was their lowest of the season. Before that, their low was 27 against Clemson in late November. But I mean, all their other games they scored at least 35 points. Rutgers' average is 20. Like you said, if this was Steve and Steve, we would say bet the farm on Wake Forest. Should Rutgers actually take that game?
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, but as the old song used to go, nobody ever died for dear old Rutgers. I'm pretty sure that the Scarlet Knights could go to Jacksonville. There's no question about that. They could have fun in Jacksonville, but they wouldn't have fun when they played the game. And
as the late Dusty Rhodes would say, this would be like, you play the game and head to the pay window, because that's basically what Rutgers would be doing, is going to get a payday out of this, because they're not going to win this game.
Well, the cash goes to the ACC anyway. So anyway, all right. Well,
in Rutgers' case, it would go to the Big Ten, I guess. Would they take that from the SEC's cut since Texas A&M pulled out? Is that how that worked? Well, because obviously it was supposed to be Texas A&M.
So then you pull out. Yeah.
Yeah, so then that money comes back out. Then it goes to whoever's in.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it goes to whatever conference is. Just a real quick, business of sports aspect. What happens is when you go to a bowl, the colleges themselves do not handle all that. That's all taken care of from a conference level. Each team, when they win, the money goes to the conference. Okay. They build units. It's a unit. At the end of the bowl season, the units, the amount of bowls you go to, is split evenly amongst the teams in each and every conference, with each team who won the game getting a slightly larger chunk of that unit than the ones who didn't participate in a college.
So all those crappy teams still get money.
Everybody gets money. That's the whole. That's how it works. The teams, even the national championship situation, if an Alabama wins, if an Ohio State or Georgia, whomever wins, the conference takes the cash and divvies it up amongst the. So you can be just as bad as you can be Vanderbilt in the SEC and benefit from the fact that the SEC have a number of teams in the bowls. Same for the ACC. Same for any other conference. So
now, see what would be funny is if by some fluke, down the road, that if somebody like Army, one of the remaining independent teams, were to somehow find their way into the CFP.
Well, that's a good point. Yeah. Well,
because
it's a good point because Notre Dame has. Yeah, Notre Dame has, and Notre Dame gets to keep all their money. So yeah, so you're right. The only place Notre Dame doesn't get to keep the money unit wise is in the NCAA basketball tournament because they participate in the ACC. But yeah, I should have. That's a good caveat. Both Army and because they are independents. Technically, BYU is an independent still as well. So they get to keep all of the money that they get from the bowls. So those 3 teams. The rest of the teams in the bowls are affiliated to some conference somewhere. So even if it's only one conference, if it's one representative of a conference in a bowl, and they give. So.
Well, either way, there's plenty of money to be had.
You may or may not want to know. There it is. Yeah, there is. And they also get little goodie bags, and we'll talk to Jack next week, and he'll give you an idea of what goodie bags that each one.
He can send us some goodie bags from the Birmingham Bowl.
There's probably a lot left over. I know there's a lot of tickets.
Good seats still available.
Like you got Miami going. Yeah, you got Miami going to Baylor to play in the Sun Bowl. I mean, how's that? And by the way, that's actually a rematch of the Sun Bowl not that long ago. So
that's true.
I'm not so certain that that the Hurricanes are going to jump plane and Hurricane fans are going to jump on a plane and fly to El Paso to watch them play Baylor. But
nobody wants to go to El Paso anyway.
Yeah, it's not a bad place, but.
It's not a great place either.
No, it's not a great place either. No question. You're right on that one. All right, so we have 2 bowl games. We had a bunch of outstanding college and NBA games. Are we going for 2 for the money, or what are we doing here?
No, we've got Thursday Night Football.
Oh, I forgot. How silly of me.
And Nathan, real quick, I like Liberty in that game over Stanford. Like we talked about earlier, Liberty hit 15 threes yesterday. They're a good veteran team. Richie McKay has the Flames playing good basketball of late. I'm not sold on Stanford. They got lucky yesterday against Wyoming. I don't expect them to pull luck out twice in a row. I'm surprised they're actually favored in that game. I treat that as the fact that Stanford plays in a power conference and Liberty plays in the Atlantic Sun, so they have to get faded a little bit. I like the Flames there. To Thursday Night Football, we're going to the Music City. 49ers and the Titans. San Francisco, they've pushed themselves into a playoff spot now. They're 8-6. They're in the thick of the NFC West. Tennessee 9-5. But these teams are 2 teams heading in different directions. San Francisco has won 2 straight in 5 of their last 6. They beat Atlanta 31-13 on Sunday. Meanwhile, Tennessee has lost 3 of their last 4 and haven't scored more than 20 points in that stretch. And that came in that win over Jacksonville. Now, there are injuries to talk about. Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga, Maurice Hurst, and Elijah Mitchell are out for the 49ers. Look for Jeff Wilson and Deebo Samuel to carry the load in the ground game. Big blows to Tennessee in the offensive line as Roger Saffold and Taylor Lewan. So the entire left side of the line for the Titans are out, along with David Long and Laurel Murchison. San Francisco is 4-0 in their last 4 after picking up more than 350 yards of offense in their last game. They're 4-0 in their last 4 on grass and 5-1 in their last 6 overall. Meanwhile, Week 16 is not kind to the Titans. They're 5-15-1 in their last 21 against the spread. They are 1-4 in their last 5 overall, and they're 1-4 in their last 5 after giving up less than 150 yards passing in their previous game. The 49ers don't need to throw the ball that much. They can just run it and then set up George Kittle off play action, and Kittle's been a monster of late. And he's going to factor nicely into our 2 for the money as I actually throw in something different this week or tonight. You have to like the way the 49ers are playing. Tennessee has turned the ball over a lot. They cost them the game against Pittsburgh Sunday. 4 turnovers, 3 in the span of 10 plays in the second half. I like the 49ers giving 3 on the road to beat the Titans, who have suddenly now seen the Colts creeping up on them in the AFC South. Granted, the Titans own the tiebreaker for sweeping the series, but they're sliding the wrong way at the wrong time.
You brought up a good point about Kittle. Kyle Shanahan loves to use what used to be a George Seifert, Bill Walsh West Coast offense type little thing there with Kittle, where it'll be a 3 or a 5 yard pass, and Kittle, because he's such a beast, will get 8 or 9 yards out of a 3 or 4 yard pass. So, even if the running game isn't quite up to what, the standards are, I don't see there's anybody in Tennessee that can cover Kittle. I mean, nobody else can. So why would you think they would? And you got to believe that Tennessee's feeling the heat because, the Colts are breathing down their backs. So,
Exactly.
It's almost, this might be, I don't think it's unfair to say this, but I do believe this might be an elimination game. We got 29 teams, which is the most in the history of the playoffs, according to Elias Sports Bureau, potentially with 3 weeks left to go in the season, potentially left in the playoff picture. And these are 2 of them. So I think the loser of this game could very likely be on the outside looking in of the playoff situation. And you're right. The 49ers have been hot. Kittle's been hot. Jimmy G has been hot. So why not ride the hot hand?
Yeah, and like we said, Jeff Wilson stepped right in for Elijah Mitchell and had a good game last week. Plus, Deebo Samuel, he can do a catch on the ball. He can do a run on the ball. He's a nice Swiss Army knife. Meanwhile, Tennessee, Julio Jones has been banged up. A.J. Brown hopes to play tonight after being activated from IR. But what's he going to give you after missing 3 weeks with a hamstring? And what's he going to what's Tannehill going to – is he going to have time to throw the ball, missing his entire left side of the offensive line, especially with Nick Bosa over there, who leads the league in tackles for loss?
Well, with a right-handed quarterback, you're missing the left side of the line. So that's commonly called the blind side for no
that's commonly called death.
Yeah. When somebody tweaks their hamstring, that's always tough to gauge because they don't want – they're a little hesitant to push, hard to see, what's going on because they're afraid they're going to do it again. So, there's a lot of tentativeness, at least early. So, yeah, it's not lining up well for the Titans tonight. It's lining up with everything moving in the gold and red for tonight. They definitely look like a team that and they've played well as of late too. So yeah, 49ers against
with the way they played.
No. And they've beaten some good teams too. So
that's true.
Yeah. There you go. All right. So now after I forgot it's Thursday,
That's all right, because we had football Monday and Tuesday.
Tuesday. I don't forget Tuesday night NFL, but I forget Thursday night NFL. So all right, now we move for 2 for the money, and Chris teased something here that he's got something a little special. Let's see what it is.
Yeah, I'm going to pair the 2 NFL ones together. I like the 49ers -3 over Tennessee, and I also, for reasons we just talked about, I also like Kittle to go over 68.5 receiving yards. In the last 3 games, Kittle has been targeted 33 times. He's caught 28 passes for 425 yards and 3 scores. If you're scoring at home, kids, that's 141.67 yards per game in the last 3. The Titans don't play good pass defense. We've seen that all year long. They've been lit up repeatedly when it comes to the pass. The Titans come into this one ranked. Let me see here because I know it's an ugly number. I looked at it yesterday. I know it hasn't gotten any better. The Titans have given up an average of better than 260 yards through the air this season, and that includes games where they gave up more than 300 yards. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 times, and multiple others where they gave up more than 250, including 288 to Patrick Mahomes. They gave up 273 to Trevor Lawrence. He gave up 343 to Russell Wilson, 294 to Matthew Stafford, 309 to Trevor Siemian, of all people, 310 to Mac Jones. I mean, you're talking about some guys that you're not necessarily expecting to light up the numbers. 297 to the Jets when Zach Wilson was playing. I mean, so the Titans, they're not going to stop the pass. And if they can't stop the run, it's going to free Kittle up for big yardage over the middle. Look for him to go over the 68.5-yard mark easily in this one. Then BYU.
Yeah.
BYU minus 5.5 over Vanderbilt out there in the Diamond Head Classic. BYU, we talked about, beat South Florida in that rock fight. Vanderbilt got past Hawaii 68-54 in the late game on the East Coast that ended sometime around 2:15. They'll play tonight at 10. And then, like I said, the Suns over the Thunder. The Thunder play terrible in the second game of back-to-backs. They're bad on the road. The Suns have won 24 out of 26, and they're 14-2 at home. They should have no problem dusting Oklahoma City to get the win there.
Yeah, I like that Kittle situation. That really is Shanahan has always used tight ends, and now he's got a tight end who is probably the best in football. And Kittle definitely has. Jimmy G looks for him the moment they get in the red zone. And that's not a bad thing.
You can't argue with the numbers that he's put up. I mean, he missed 3 games earlier this season, but he's got 63 catches for 850 yards, and you figure half those yards and nearly half those catches have come in the last 3 games.
Great. He'd have been over 1,000 yards easy.
Oh, yeah, and he could get there tonight for all we know with the way Tennessee doesn't play pass coverage.
Right. Well, they can put a linebacker on him. Good luck. All right.
Their best bet would be if they try to shadow on Kevin Byard, and I don't even know if Byard can handle it.
We'll see. But if they do, that leaves somebody else up. You were talking about some of the backs picking up the slack. So
yeah, Deebo Samuel, he's the Swiss Army knife.
Right. So go to the Army knife. You got Kittle. We'll go the other side. All right. So we've gone 2 for the money. Time to go for 4 for the show.
Right, and here we go. I like Wyoming minus 2.5 over Northern Iowa. Both those teams were in close games yesterday. Wyoming lost by 3 to Stanford. Northern Iowa lost by 2 to Liberty in the first round of the Diamond Head Classic. But I like the Cowboys a little more than I like the Panthers. Wyoming is a good offensive team. They've got good weapons. Look for Graham Ike, Xavier Ducell, Hunter Maldonado to have big games. Northern Iowa, they can only rely really on A.J. Green. And when you have multiple weapons against one, it usually works in favor of the team that has more weapons. St. John's over Butler, like we said, the Red Storm, they're missing some pieces. But with the press, that's the great equalizer because they're a very athletic team and they can run teams in the ground. Butler doesn't play well offensively. They have to slow games down to a crawl. And if Mike Anderson's team controls the tempo, they should have little problem with the Bulldogs. San Antonio over the Lakers. We talked about that earlier. The Lakers have, one guy, maybe 2. So I like the Spurs on the road with 7 double-digit scoring options. And Golden State minus 6 over Memphis. The Grizzlies have lost a couple in a row. Golden State's at home. We've talked about them. They're one of the 2 best teams in the league right now. Can't argue with that.
John would like your opinion of the Wyoming situation here.
Well, yeah, I like Wyoming. I mean, they've got a very good team. They've got a good rotation. Jeff Linder's done a good job. And BYU, like I said, I like them over Vanderbilt. I know people are trying to pump up the point total on the Commodores, but outside of Scottie Pippen Jr., who doesn't even spell his name the same way as his dad did, there's not a whole lot of weapons on Vanderbilt's team offensively. Jerry Stackhouse, he's trying to put a team together, but every time he gets somebody in, Either they get hurt or they transfer out. I mean, look at that. We've seen Darius Garland come and go. Last year you had Dylan Disu. He transferred to Texas Tech. So, I mean, every time you try to get a second or third option in there, they leave after a season. So it's an uphill climb for Stackhouse over there in the SEC because everybody wants to play somewhere. They want to play for Rick Barnes or they want to play for Calipari or, they want to play for Will Wade down in Baton Rouge. Nobody wants to go to Vanderbilt.
It's a lovely school in Nashville, so get a good education there. But if you're not going to stay, you might as well not give it a shot.
But they're probably not even the best school in Nashville because isn't that where Belmont is?
Belmont is. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they'd probably rather play for Belmont because Belmont, they're getting in a tournament.
Yeah. Austin Peay's not that far away either. So
that's true, too.
You got another good basketball team. All right. Now, we've gone for 1 for the money, 2 for the show. And now this is the Chinese menu. This is the Christmas version of the Chinese menu. I'll let Chris explain why it's a Chinese menu. We got 10 things. What? That doesn't mean you have to go to all 10. You can do whatever you want. Go for it, Chris.
Yeah, you can take 2, take 4, take whatever works for you. Ultimately, we throw these out there so you have options because it's always good to have options, isn't it?
Of course.
The 49ers and the Titans, I look to stay under 45. Tennessee has scored 14 points or less in 3 of their last 4 games. Haven't scored more than 20. Both teams like to run the ball. It could shorten the clock and make this a fast game. UCF and Florida, I look for it to go over 55.5. Like we said, Florida does not play defense. Half their guys aren't interested. The other half are probably drunk. They were terrible defensively all year. I look for Miami, Ohio, and North Texas to stay under the number just because of the fact that both these teams play decent defense. Miami, Ohio is probably the lone aberration in the MAC that actually plays defense. Everybody else likes to give up 35, 40 points a game. Houston and Indiana, I look to go over 223.5. The Rockets have gone over the total on the road at a ridiculous clip this season. They don't play defense well. Indiana's not a great defensive team either, so look for a bunch of points in that one. I like the Jazz at home, giving 12 against Minnesota. Anthony Edwards, Pat Beverly, Jared Vanderbilt, Josh Okogie, all out for Minnesota. Utah's been one of those teams that hasn't been affected too much by COVID protocols, probably because there's not a whole lot to do in Salt Lake City, but that works in their favor. I like the Wizards on the road, -1 over the Knicks. The Wizards are rested. They haven't played since Saturday as they had a game against Brooklyn postponed on Tuesday. The Knicks lost Derrick Rose to ankle surgery yesterday. He'll be out a couple of months in addition to all the players that the Knicks have and the health and safety protocols. If you didn't want to play the total in the Indiana-Houston game, I like the Pacers -8.5 over the Rockets. I like the Bucks and Mavs to stay under 209. That number has been dropping all day long. It started at about 212.5. Luka Doncic is in the health and safety protocols. They don't know if he'll play Saturday against Utah. Kristaps Porzingis is questionable. Tim Hardaway Jr. out for the Mavericks. The Bucks, you probably won't see Antetokounmpo. You probably won't see Jrue Holiday. You probably won't see Bobby Portis. You might see Chris Middleton. But, the Mavericks play at a snail's pace normally. Without Doncic, it's even slower. I look for that to fall short of the total. I like Liberty +2 over Stanford. That game tips off at 4 o'clock, I believe. And then in the late game that tips off at 12:30 Eastern time, that's after midnight, as Eric Clapton says, after midnight, we're going to let it all hang out. Look for the Rainbow Warriors -3.5 to beat Jim's South Florida team that was absolutely atrocious yesterday and who are dead last in the nation in Division I in three-point shooting at 22.2%. They were 2 for 21 from three-point range yesterday against BYU, which makes me wonder, why did you keep shooting from out there? Hawaii, they battled back from a 19-point deficit in the first half to make it a 4-point game before Vanderbilt put it away. I like Hawaii at home to excite the crowd of literally dozens of people at the Stan Sheriff Center.
Yeah, well, I think the key is to be polite to the host. So I'm sure the Bulls will do that, be polite and allow the Rainbow Warriors to win.
Well, I don't know. They could break some windows with the way they were shooting yesterday.
Yeah, that's
I
true
mean,
too.
that was just atrocious. Of course, BYU wasn't much better. I'm not gonna talk that up either.
Yeah.
Nathan, to your question, I like the Heat minus 6.5 over Detroit. The Pistons have not been all that impressive, obviously, and they don't have their leading scorer in Jeremy Grant. Puts a lot of pressure on Kate Cunningham and company. The Heat, they've been banged up, but they still got guys that step up and contribute on any given night. They probably don't need Jimmy Butler and company against the Pistons, who have been, well, let's put it nicely, atrocious.
On a good day, yes.
Exactly.
Well, look, guys, it's been a lot of fun this week. We will not be here tomorrow because tomorrow, the day before Christmas, and we hope that we're going to let you all run around and get this final shopping done, or we're just getting.
Not to mention, there's literally nothing going on in sports to talk about unless you're interested in the Easy Post Hawaii Bowl where Memphis faces Hawaii. So Hawaii gets to play basically in their own stadium,
right,
for a bowl game
in Aloha. So there's that too. But have a wonderful, safe holiday, Chris. To you and your family, all the best.
You and yours as well, Jim.
Thank you,
and all of you out there. We hope you have a happy holiday, Merry Christmas.
We'll be back on Monday, and there will be plenty to talk about on Monday. There may very well be a good opportunity to take a look and see. We said that according to Elias, there's 29 teams still alive for the playoffs. There won't be on Monday. By that time, there will have been some sorting out of it all. So we'll be back. We appreciate you guys coming. We think it's a lot of fun to be with you. So have a wonderful and safe holiday weekend. We will catch you back on Monday. Until then, for Mr. King, I'm Jim Williams saying so long. And again, have a wonderful and safe holiday.